Welcome back to our journey through human history. Today, we are diving into one of the most turbulent and transformative periods of all time, the 20th century. A century defined by two world wars and a decades-long ideological standoff. So, how did it all begin? Picture the world in 1914. Powerful empires, the British, French, Russian, Ottoman, and Austro-Hungarian, were tangled in a web of complex alliances and fierce rivalries. It was a powder keg waiting for a spark. That spark came in Sarajevo with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. This single event triggered a chain reaction, and within weeks, Europe was engulfed in what would become known as World War I or the Great War. This wasn't a war like any seen before. It was the first truly global conflict, pulling in nations from every continent. And it was terrifyingly modern. New technologies like machine guns, tanks, poison gas, and airplanes transformed the battlefield into a brutal landscape of trench warfare. For 4 long years, millions of soldiers fought and died in horrific conditions, leading to staggering casualties on an unprecedented scale. By 1918, the war was over, but the world was forever changed. The mighty German, Austro-Hungarian, Russian, and Ottoman empires had all collapsed. The political map of Europe was completely redrawn. In the aftermath, leaders came together hoping to prevent such a catastrophe from ever happening again. They formed the League of Nations, an ambitious international organization designed to maintain world peace. It was a noble idea, but as we'll see, it faced immense challenges. The 2 decades that followed, known as the Interwar Period, were anything but peaceful. The 1920s roared for a while, but it was built on shaky foundations. In 1929, the Wall Street crash triggered the Great Depression, a global economic crisis that plunged millions into poverty and despair. This economic turmoil created fertile ground for radical new ideas and extremist political movements. In Italy, Benito Mussolini and his fascist party rose to power. In the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin consolidated his totalitarian communist regime. And most faithfully, in Germany, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party capitalized on national humiliation and economic desperation to seize control. These totalitarian regimes were built on aggressive nationalism, militarism, and the suppression of all opposition. They rejected international cooperation and openly prepared for expansion and conflict. The stage was being set for an even greater war. That war began in 1939 when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. Britain and France declared war, and World War II erupted. This conflict was even more devastating and widespread than the first. It was a war fought on multiple fronts across Europe, Africa, and Asia. The Axis powers Germany, Italy, and Japan sought to dominate the world, while the Allied powers led by Great Britain, the Soviet Union, and later the United States fought to stop them. The war saw incredible acts of heroism and unimaginable horrors. The Holocaust, the systematic genocide of 6 million Jews and millions of others by the Nazis, remains one of the darkest chapters in human history. The fighting was brutal, from the frozen battlefields of Stalingrad to the island-hopping campaigns in the Pacific. Finally, in 1945, the war came to a dramatic and terrifying end. After the surrender of Germany, the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, ushering in the nuclear age and forcing Japan's surrender. World War II left the world in ruins, with an estimated 70 to 85 million people dead. The old European powers were exhausted and weakened. From the ashes of this global conflict, 2 new superpowers emerged, the United States and the Soviet Union. Although they had been allies during the war, their fundamental differences soon became clear. The U.S. championed democracy and capitalism, while the USSR promoted communism and a state-controlled economy. This ideological clash gave birth to the Cold War. It wasn't a direct hot war between the 2 superpowers, mainly because of the threat of nuclear annihilation. Instead, it was a tense, decades-long standoff. This global chess match was characterized by an intense arms race, as both sides built up massive nuclear arsenals. They engaged in espionage, propaganda, and a space race that captivated the world. The Cold War was fought through proxy wars in places like Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan, where the US and USSR supported opposing sides. The world was divided into 2 blocks. The Western Bloc, led by the US and its NATO allies, and the Eastern Bloc, led by the Soviet Union and its Warsaw Pact allies. A symbolic Iron Curtain descended across Europe, separating the communist East from the capitalist West, with the Berlin Wall as its most famous and brutal symbol. While the superpowers vied for global dominance, another monumental shift was taking place: decolonization. The European empires, weakened by 2 world wars, could no longer hold on to their vast colonies. Across Africa and Asia, independence movements that had been growing for decades finally succeeded. Nations from India and Pakistan to Ghana and Vietnam fought for and won their freedom. This process dramatically redrew the world map once again, creating dozens of new countries and giving a voice to billions of people who had been under colonial rule. These newly independent nations often found themselves caught in the middle of the Cold War rivalry, trying to navigate their own paths in a divided world. Finally, by the late 1980s, the Soviet system was crumbling under the weight of economic stagnation and popular discontent. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, a powerful symbol of the end of an era. One by one, the communist regimes of Eastern Europe collapsed. In 1991, the Soviet Union itself dissolved, officially ending the Cold War. The United States was left as the world's sole superpower, and a new era of globalization and interconnectedness began. The 20th century was a period of extreme violence and profound change. It showed us the worst of humanity, but also our incredible resilience and our enduring hope for a better future. The lessons learned from the World Wars and the Cold War continue to shape our world today, from our international institutions to our ongoing debates about freedom, power, and justice. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey through the 20th century insightful, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next episode. See you next time.